Hello, everyone. This is Ahmad Mansour with SPR. Thank you for joining us today. This is our last web meeting, and we're calling this Toolkits in Transition. And we're really looking forward to engaging you today in this last web meeting. However, before we get started, we'd like to turn it over to DOL's Megan and Jonathan.
Thanks, Ahmad. This is Megan Lizick. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here again with you all today, and wanting to just welcome all of our state teams and welcoming all of our folks from SPR. Here in the room, we have a lot of our ETA, EBE staff with us. So you'll see a lot more folks listed in on this slide than we normally have. So we'll be doing some more introductions later, but we're all here and we're excited to hear about the toolkit from SPR, and we'll be back later to share some more transition information. So back to you, Ahmad.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Well, once again, I just want to say welcome to everyone for joining us today. It's been a exciting and long road of engaging you all for the last year in this project, and we've had a great time doing it, and really looking forward to with what moves forward in the next stages with EBE. So before we go forward, just wanted to thank some of the people with SPR who's done a remarkable job in making this project work. Want to acknowledge the work of Vince for serving as our project framer, and also for Sam and Kristen for serving as our content wizards and our community engagers. And I just really can't thank them enough, because as you all know, that they have been really our wizards, creating companion guides and our web meetings and events, our toolkits, et al. And also want to thank Trace and David for providing all of their great back-end support. And I got to say, without them, we couldn't have done it. A lot of you don't know, but every day, every time we do these meetings, there's a lot of work that go into it. And believe it or not, we prepare for glitches, because when you're really hosting these type of events, there's usually something inevitable that occurs and go wrong. However, we've actually been able to get through a full year of doing these web meetings, and there hasn't really been any significant technical glitches. And really, that's not pure luck. That's because of the professionalism of Trace and David and their preparation and knowledge of this system. And so just wanted to thank them for all of the great work that they've done. And also, just want to say that, this business engagement project, we've really enjoyed working with DOL and just really all of the states in this project, and giving us an opportunity to put forth our support in a wide range of strategies and program designs. We really appreciate the opportunity to design this with you all, and to use the creative skills of our team to bring forth these great web meetings and content. And also, when we do these events, we really consider the work with you all and with DOL to be co-creators in the process. And we've really learned a lot from the experience. It's been really valuable. So before we move forward, this is a time where I'm not going to go over the instructions, because I would imagine at this point you all know where the buttons are. So without further ado, we'll just put the slide up there, believing that you know how to work yourself around the system at this point. And so with that said, I would like to turn it over to Kristen. Oh, excuse me. Let me go over the agenda first. My apologies. So for today, we will kind of do a year in review, just essentially going over some of the things that we've had the opportunity to engage you all in today. There were a lot of EBE lessons and new ideas that really came from the peer-to-peer experience of you all. I like to call that co-creation, and there was a lot of that done throughout this year. Also, we would like to kind of introduce some of the tools that you all made possible because of some of the peer-to-peer engagements that had occurred. And then lastly, we're going to turn it over to Jonathan and Megan and really speak to the transition to EBE Year 2, and they'll talk a little bit about the reporting and the grants management aspect of EBE. So with that said, now I think it is an appropriate time to turn it over to Kristen, who for this whole year has done such a great job in making all of this interesting and engaging throughout the process. So once again, I want to thank her and Sam for their great work. Here you are, Kristen.
Thanks, Ahmad, and thanks to you too, Ahmad, on behalf of our team. Ahmad's been our kind of fearless leader who is always finding ways to channel our energies productively, and he does a good job of encouraging us to be learners too, and not just content producers or hosts for our convenings. And he, like me and Sam and Trace and David and everybody else at SPR, we do this work to make a positive difference for workers and firms and communities, and we always do it better when we're in a learning mode ourselves. So thanks, Ahmad, for your contributions, seen and unseen, through the life of the project. So speaking of the project, let's just spend a couple minutes reviewing where we've been. So the EBE project launched last July, and Vince was there then, but Sam and Ahmad and I joined a little bit later. And we started with hosting monthly web convenings where we always encouraged and hugely appreciated your participation. And in between, we started working on materials that could support the work that you are doing within your teams this year, and then also the work that we're doing together as a group each time we meet. And we hosted some amazing speakers, including many of you who were graciously willing to share your successes and challenges and tools and strategies and everything else we asked you about. And as well, we hosted some top-notch experts, subject matter experts, who shared their smarts and experiences about issues that we all wanted to learn more about. And we developed and curated and shared a range of tools that we hope you were able to use this year, but will also come in handy, we hope, next year as you begin to mentor a new round of colleagues, maybe neighboring state teams or regional partnerships in your own state, or some combination. And we also learned some things. When we went back and reviewed the implementation plans and our notes and the content from the chat sessions we had, and also your responses to all the questions that Sam asked you during the last couple of weeks when he was calling to follow up after the virtual learning series, we found a few areas where we saw that shifts had occurred in how the teams were approaching business engagement. And so we thought we'd just share those with you. And the first has to do with the value question. You may remember early in the project, when you submitted your implementation plans, all but one of those plans identified the issue of understanding the value you brought to business as a key issue. And you might remember in our early web convenings, we talked about this. And when we talked about it early on, value often meant things like, what was the value of your services to an employer, and how do you know that? How do you engage business in determining where your value is greatest? And so it was pretty focused on services at the time. And then over time, as we've had numerous chats, and you guys have done lots of work at home and brought the results of that work to our convenings, the conversations have shifted a little bit, and we've noticed that over time we've been exploring the idea of value in a different way. We've been talking more about the value of partnering with employers to solve industry or community problems, for example. These kinds of issues came up and were probably most evident during the virtual learning series when so many of you were asking questions of our speakers that touched on this issue, that were rooted in, the idea of value in partnership or value in other things that you bring to the table beyond services. So that was one thing that we noticed and we thought we'd share with you. Another issue had to do with the approach to staff training. And again, at the beginning of the project, you might remember in the implementation plans, staff training was a big area of interest for most of the teams. And plans for training were either not quite developed or many of them were focused on kind of short-term skills. For example, in those early implementation plans, a number of you were implementing new software systems, things like CRM systems, Salesforce, different kinds of tools. And you talked about training in terms of the training for using those tools. In other cases, there was sort of more comprehensive plans for training, and you largely planned to do that yourself, developing your own curricula and that sort of thing. But then we hosted Melanie Arthur, and you might remember in our December web convening, Melanie had developed that whole series of modules around business services and business engagement that ETA had commissioned. She commissioned her to do. And we hosted her in December, and you all had a million questions. And then 3 of the teams engaged her as a subject matter expert during the last few weeks. And a whole host of others. I think there were 8 teams all in all represented in the training in Atlanta. So staff training has really sort of moved forward. And it seems now that there are fewer teams that are developing training themselves. And when we have convened and talked about it over the last several months, it's clear that many of you are focused on not just narrow skills training for your own staff, but rather training that addresses this issue of kind of culture shift and role change, the issue of establishing a new kind of relationship with business, in addition to perhaps learning new software tools and whatnot, but sort of this expanded idea of, what does it take to build capacity to shift the way that you engage business. And so that was just something that we'd seen in terms of a shift in how you talk about it and the kinds of questions you've asked speakers, and clearly in your engagement of Melanie and participation in the training using the modules that ETA developed. So I think ETA probably feels rightly good about this. About the training that they commissioned being so in demand, and we hope that it continues to provide value going forward. And then the third area where we saw a kind of change was in our collective approach to peer learning. You might remember, and I hope that you're laughing a little bit now, at some of those early web convenings. And thank you so much to those of you who did participate in those early web convenings. But it was our experience that when we called, way back in August or September, right after the implementation plans were turned in, maybe October, when we called and asked you to say a little bit about what you were doing, many of you sort of felt like it was a presentation. And so, we're thinking, we're not far enough. We don't quite have enough to offer. And so, we kept sort of encouraging that really it was about sharing and less about presenting. And but even back then, the chat questions were quite formal. And over time, we've seen this change, and it's been great. You've shared a lot in the last several months, and it's been much less formal, and questions were less formal and less, they were certainly shorter. And so we saw a lot more activity as a result, and that was great. During the last couple of convenings, we saw you start setting up conference calls with each other completely unmediated by us, which is exactly what we hoped would happen since we know that convening smart people like you and getting you to share ideas is the best way to accelerate innovation. So we were really happy to see that happen. And then during the last couple of weeks, when Sam called and talked to you, you might remember that he asked about what in the project helped you the most, or what you liked the most. And a number of you specifically named peer learning. And this, I have to say, warmed our hearts. And then finally, in the beginning of the project, and this is a little bit connected to the value point that we started with, many of you shared information about partnerships with business that sounded a lot like kind of customerships. And, again, lots of interest in, better services, redesigning services, getting business to take advantage of your services, getting them to come back. But there was less chat and less emphasis on working alongside business. And this, too, has shifted a little bit. And, when we talked about Ad1, for example, there were a lot of follow-up questions that we got about that. And as a result, turned it into a profile that Sam will talk about that in a few minutes. There are, people that are looking at launching new kinds of sector strategies and otherwise participating with business in just new ways that certainly include services, but also go beyond that. So those are some of the shifts that that we've seen over time. And then finally, before I hand the floor to Sam, I wanted to personally thank all of you, especially those of you who were active in the chat window or by email or by reaching out to us on the phone or however. When we're in a web-only environment like this, it can be a little hard to gauge whether you're, bored or interested or confused or benefiting from the content we're sharing. And when the phone lines are muted, and even when they're not, chat is a really important kind of thermometer. And after each web convening, we go over the content of chats and we look for questions and common themes or challenges, and we use that content to plan agendas or develop questions that we'll ask you over the phone or by email. So at the time, it might seem trivial, but chat has really played an important role in this project. And so I wanted to thank each and every one of you for your contributions in that medium. And I'll miss all of you. And now I'll hand the floor over to Sam.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. So over the course of this year, the EBE initiative, there has been an array of resources that have been created and curated to support both the implementation of business engagement strategies and also to facilitate and document the peer learning that has taken place. So to capture all this, we have put together an EBE toolkit and resource guide. This toolkit and resource guide contains a complete collection of these resources that have been developed. They include descriptions, images, and associated topics for each of them. Resources have been organized in the following content areas that you can see on the right hand of your screen. I'm just going to walk through those briefly. So the virtual support package contains documents that you will already be familiar with, including the EBE companion guide and framework, sample agendas, and the narrated tutorial, for instance. We've also posted links and descriptions to the virtual learning series that took place in the beginning of June. This includes links to the webinar transcripts and the resources that were discussed, such as David Hunn's return on investment report that generated so much interest. The section on resources and tools in this collection is the collection of examples that so many of you were gracious enough to send in, and it also includes a number of other resources and examples that we have collected over the course of this project. Finally, we did include a complete collection of our web convenings that have taken place since the beginning of the EBE project, just for all of you who are feeling nostalgic and would like to go back and listen to some of the great conversations that have taken place. So I also wanted to take just a moment to highlight a few of the individual resources that we have not talked too much about that are in these in the toolkit. For example, one thing you will not have seen are the profiles that Kristen mentioned. Tim Oginger and Josh Kopis from the National Association of Workforce Boards talked to a number of you over the past 2 weeks and coalesced this information into these profiles, and we think that you'll be excited to see what they found out. We also focused a lot on the use of social media throughout this project. We have collected examples of social media applications that were discussed and also collected the social media contacts of everybody that submitted them. We really wanted to make sure that you were all able to easily connect through social media from here on out. Lastly, we also wanted to remind you about the tutorial that I mentioned earlier, which is now available on the EBE Workforce 3.1 website. We call this a tutorial, but really what it is a narrated discussion with instructions of a number of tools that can be adapted for facilitating convenings, brainstorming activities, developing goals and strategies. It's something that you could even send to a friend or a colleague that has no background on this project, but they could immediately understand what these tools are and how to use them. And finally, I just want to take a moment and thank everybody that sent in sample tools from your projects. I know that I was emailing and calling all of you quite a bit and really appreciate your patience and participating in this. As Kristen mentioned, the peer-to-peer learning aspects of this project have been a key component. And as you go forward into year 2, I hope this compilation will continue to grow. And so here's a cover of what the report looks like. And again, this will be made available on the EBE website. And with that, I would like to go ahead and hand it over to our partners at ETA.
Oh, great. Thanks, Sam, Kristen, Ahmad, everybody at SBR, and all the state grantees, state teams. Like I say, we've got that wealth of resources that Sam and Kristen just reviewed, and for this second part of the meeting, we really want to sort of delve into the year 2 activities and really what it means, what we've putting together everything we've accomplished over the first year and transitioning into year 2. Before we get started with that, I just wanted to point out you may notice a few new names on these slides here from the ETA team. We're lucky enough to have some new faces on the team going into year 2, so we really hope to be able to continue to provide you the technical assistance and support you need to complete your business engagement activities in year 2. Of course, we have Megan and myself as have been the program leads over the first year. Unfortunately, I will be leaving the DOL ETA team towards the end of the month, and so we wanted to take this time here to introduce some of the new people on our team who have a wealth of experience but will be taking over some of the FPO and program office duties in year 2. We have Rochelle Kirkley and Wendy Havenstreit will be taking over as FPOs for regions 1, 2, and 3. Megan Lizick will still be the FPO for regions 4, 5, and 6. And so I'd just like to turn it over to them to say a few words about themselves, a little bit about their history and experience with DOL. So turn it over to Wendy Havenstreit first.
Hi. This is Wendy Havenstreit. Nice to be chatting with you all. I'll get to know you more going forward, but I just want to let you know I've been with ETA for about 4 years now as a workforce analyst. And prior to that, I was actually a program operator for a couple of decades. 11 years in northern Nevada, very rural northern Nevada, and another 11 years actually at the Oakland Private Industry Council in Oakland, California. So I've had all kinds of jobs in the workforce system, starting with career counselor and branch manager and planning manager, wrote the first 2-year plan coming out of the JTPA years, and ended up as the director of One Stop System Services in Oakland, responsible for the comprehensive One Stop Career Center. Also oversaw planning and performance, the Adult Dislocated Worker Program, and all of the contracting activities and technical assistance for the youth service providers. So as you can tell from my bio, I'm about 95 years old, and really glad to be joining, not quite, but almost, really glad to be joining this incredible, incredible team. Very sorry to be losing John. I want you to know that those 2 events are not related, he assures me, and we're going to miss him a lot, but they've done a terrific job.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Kirkley, and actually I joined ETA in 2004. That's like 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago. I've worked in several offices, started with the Division of United States Employment Services, then with the Division of Adult Services, which is now, which they renamed as Division of Adult Services and Workforce Systems, with the policy team. So, I feel like provide technical assistance because that's concerning the WHEEL programs and one-stop services to basically, I guess, internal and external customers, I guess, businesses, staff, administrators, job seekers, and various organizations. And I also, give them basic information and assist with problem solving. And I also work closely with the workforce development specialists and analysts, assisting them in getting their TINs, TECOs, SGAs, and this, I guess, regular correspondence out. So I do sorts of, I guess, a variety of a lot of things. So, and I also want to say that I'm happy to, I guess, to be taking over some of your grants, and I'll be getting in touch with you soon. So welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Wendy and Rochelle. Like you said, I'm sad to be leaving the team, but we have two very experienced people with tons of knowledge and time with ETA, so they'll more than make up for my absence, I'm sure. And of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning Stu, Jeff, and Jen Pirtle, who have done amazing work, really keep us going, keep the positivity in the room, and have really put a lot into this project, and we'll be hearing from them in a little bit later. So, like I said, you're getting two excellent people with Rochelle and Wendy, and we're transitioning them in, and you won't even notice my absence, I'm sure. So, with that, I would turn it over to Megan, and there you go.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. I just wanted to echo what Jonathan was saying. We are very excited to have Wendy and Rochelle joining our team. And while we are sad to be losing Jonathan, I think we've got a lot of good folks that are excited to be delving into our EBE work in year 2, and I will certainly be along for the ride as well. So we'll be sending you guys more information in the coming week or so. So now I wanted to move on and start with a round of thank yous. First of all, I wanted to thank our SPR colleagues, Vince Kohler, Ahmad Mansour, Kristen Wolf, Sam Trace, and all of the supporting team members for all of the great support that they have provided us on the EBE initiative, particularly with a lot of the online resources that we've talked about over the last few webinars, and helping us facilitate a lot of the peer-to-peer connections, a lot of the great chattiness that we've seen on the last few webinars, and like Kristen was saying earlier, helping us really foster our online community. We enjoy meeting with you and chatting with you and having a good dialogue during these meetings. So thank you, SPR, for being along with on the ride with us for year 1, and we are looking forward to embarking on year 2. So with that, also thank you to all of you, all the grantees and your teams, for all the hard work that you've done in the first year. Your input, your enthusiasm, your unending patience, your participation in all the webinars have been greatly appreciated over the first year, and we've all enjoyed working with you and seeing what you guys are doing in your states in regards to the EBE work and how you're connecting it to other work. So we're hopeful that we can continue that momentum into year 2 and in new and different ways. So that's kind of why we have this picture up here today. We want you to think of today as being a sort of graduation ceremony. We know that in year 1 we spent a lot of time learning and strategizing, planning, beginning to implement your plans and make changes within your systems. And in year 2, you're going to continue doing more of that, but you're also emerging as leaders as well in the system in regards to business engagement. So we know that we've been working a lot together in year 1 to get the work done, and while year 2 is focused a lot more on the peer sharing and mentoring aspect, we want to make sure that you guys have a sense that we're all still here in this together. We want you to lean on each other and learn from each other and partner with each other as we go into year 2 and try to make a collective impact on our states, within our communities, and with neighboring states as well when it comes to business engagement. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stu Warner to talk a little bit more about that idea.
Thanks, Megan. I certainly share this kind of pride of enthusiasm that we've had associating with our colleagues at SPR and all the group here in the national office. And maybe it's building on my background in higher education, but once they say graduation, I'm thinking commencement. You're on to what's next and what's new. So as we make the transition to year 2 and the mentoring activities with your new colleagues, I'm here to briefly introduce the concept of collective impact that you'll see here on the slide. As our colleagues at SPR and others will know, I borrowed and adapted much of this from Stanford University and the Innovation Review, and it's also been very helpful in our work here at ETA through an interagency funding opportunity we call the Jobs Accelerator Grants, which are based on complex partnerships between the Small Business Administration and the Economic Development Administration in different regions across the country. And I'll get back to that a little bit later as I speak. But these are good principles to apply as we think about year 2. First of all, clearly a shared agenda. Partners must have a common vision for change and even a common vocabulary as you go out and connect with EBE activities in your states and across your regions. A common agenda is helpful in terms of defining the challenges that you're addressing and acknowledging the clear and shared goals that you all have for change. This is really going to guide your work together. Certainly coordinated and mutually reinforcing activities and agreement on key outcomes will be critical to your success. As you orchestrate and specialize in different areas, as I said, with these projects with small business and economic development, often there are phases and stages to your projects that need to be complementary and joined up in order to be mutually reinforcing. Clearly, the hardest part is the continuous communication, and we really benefited from the facilitation here in the national office through your federal project officers and also through the team of technical assistance providers to create both formal and informal ways to keep people informed. Communication has to be open and reflect everyone's diverse styles and, again, that kind of vocabulary that we each bring in from our different perspectives. It's important always to surface those difficult issues as well as the successes and the promising practices that may occur. Megan mentioned the thought leaders and this kind of graduation that we're going through. You are the backbone organization. You'll provide that overall strategic direction by facilitating this dialogue among and between your partners. The hardest part, I think, is that it's continuous communication, and it's essential to sustaining your EBE partnerships. One of the things I'd like to try to do, and you can Google all this on the manufacturing.gov website, but now there are approximately 50 or more regional innovation clusters across the country. And so, for example, I'm just going to kick things off with Ohio. Believe it or not, we've got the Northeast Ohio Speed to Market Accelerator, and then in Southwestern Ohio, we've got a water cluster. These are projects that you can Google on this manufacturing.gov site, and then set up your partnerships going forward in year 2. You can look to rural jobs accelerators with 2 projects in North Carolina, one in the eastern part of the state and again one in the western part, working on sector strategies around aerospace. In South Carolina, you'll find an energy partnership. In Mississippi, you'll find a rural jobs accelerator with a focus on automotive industries, agribusiness, and even furniture manufacturing. And for those of you out in Oklahoma, be sure to look to our Advanced Manufacturing Jobs Accelerator that's focused on the oil and gas manufacturing supply chain. So once again, my encouragement to you as you match up with your states for mentoring activities, look to that collective impact that your strategic activities have helped to create in year 1 and build on that success as you commence with year 2. Thank you all, and now I'll turn things back over to Megan and Jonathan.
Great, thanks, Stu. That slide there was Stu's brainchild. He really had a great vision for how we wanted to phrase year 2 and really kick us off into year 2, because this end of year 1 and this handoff between SPR and ETA it's not the end of our work really. It's springboarding us into the actual meat and potatoes of everything that we'll be doing. So in terms of that, we really want to talk about that collective impact on the system, that idea. And obviously we want to focus a lot of that impact around the toolkit that has been, that SBR has presented to you and that will be available on the website. That toolkit, that's a ton of great resources, and that's a lot of your work. We want to thank everybody who contributed. I know some people are still finalizing some documents and others have already submitted some. This toolkit, we would love to see it continue to grow and evolve over year 2. You know, as you take and borrow resources and customize them for your own uses, we'd love to hear the stories of how those were successful and sort of what worked and what didn't work as a way to build that collective impact, because the sum of us will be more than the individual work that we all do. So like I said, we want to continue growing that toolkit, and I know Florida, North Carolina, and Oklahoma, you guys mentioned to Trace that you were still in the process of finalizing some tools. So we'd love to see them whenever they're ready, and the same goes for everybody else. We still have another year together, and so as things emerge from your offices and you're ready to share them, please let us know. So in terms of the toolkit, what else does it represent for us? I mean, Megan, you want to
Sure.
take over here?
So, like Jonathan said, a lot of your work is in here, but in addition to your great resources and examples, there's also, it also represents a compilation of promising practices, other examples, other information, profiles from our colleagues over at NOB, and we would really like to see you guys put it into use as you work to make that collective impact, to share it pieces and parts with your non-participating, the states that we're not participating in EBE, but that you want to mentor and share with in year 2, and also to continue to share with your colleagues internally to your states and build capacity with your own states and your partners within those states, economic development and business, to make the right kind of impact for you. So we've got a chat box here that's open, and now that we've talked at you for a bit about what we think about the toolkit and ways you might be able to use it, we'd love to hear what you're excited to use from the toolkit and how you will use it in year 2. So you can go ahead and type your responses at the bottom.
Yeah, and especially if anybody have begun using the tools already. I know a lot of this might be new today, especially the profiles and the compilation of all all your state tools. But in terms of the companion guide and framework and any of the other support documents that we rolled out a few months ago, if you've been able to use those so far, we'd love to hear about that. Any successes or challenges or ways that you customize the material. Anything that you think would need to be added to those documents. I mean, like I said, these are living documents, so they can only grow through your feedback, really.
So we've got a few folks typing. I'll give you guys a minute to think about it. And if you've got questions for us too, you can go ahead and type those into the chat.
I knew this was a good group for chat. Kristen was right.
You guys are making us excited. We're seeing lots of attendees typing, so. That's great, Laura.
Yeah, we definitely heard throughout the project a lot of excitement around the BSR modules, and so I think it's one of our flagship tools. So we're really excited to help people use that and leverage it for their own uses.
And also, I like this idea of borrowing and repurposing. I think one of the most important ideas here is that you don't need to recreate the wheel. If there's something out there that seems like a good example that can be repurposed in a way that makes sense for your state, we want to encourage you to do that. Great. It looks like Maryland is having an upcoming meeting, and we'll share some of the resources there. That's wonderful, and we look forward to hearing more about that meeting.
Great, Larry and Karen, it sounds like you guys are sharing it with your business engagement teams, and that's really one of the biggest asks we have is to get these tools out, really share them and advocate them as much as possible, because the more people know about them, the less we end up duplicating our services. I mean, these are all free for you to use. Beg, borrow, and steal as much as you can, and use it for your own purposes.
And after you get done stealing our great stuff, please tell us how you adapted it to make it even better. I think that's going to be the real richness in this project. This is Wendy, sorry. And we're very interested to know. We know that not all good ideas come from Washington, D.C., or even Oakland, California, Ahmad, and not Malala or Portland, Oregon. So we're really interested in knowing what you're doing out there and how you build on these tools.
Great, and it looks like Ohio is planning to use some of the tools internally within their different regions or areas within their state, and that's great. I think, like Wendy said, we know not all great ideas come out of Washington, and I think that there are definitely some ways that local areas can reapply some of the resources that are being shared on the website and within the toolkit in ways that are going to help them with their business engagement work.
And I see Steve in Oklahoma is going to be sharing it with their local SHRM chapters. And I think that's going to be a really interesting part for these tools is the first time they encounter those businesses and those other organizations, what their impressions are. We tend to write a lot of these materials from our point of view in the government, but they're really meant to be serving those business customers, and if they end up resonating with those clients, it's going to be really valuable to know exactly how we connected with them.
And to build on Jonathan's point, the curriculum for BSR certainly has a whole bunch of content around the idea of thinking like a recruiter and really getting into that mindset that the SHRM membership would bring to any business proposition.
Great, and Yolanda from Mississippi there, using those tools too for their business outreach with local and regional staff. it's important, especially not so much with different businesses, but also different regions throughout the country. So we really want to know how it works in different parts of the country, because every team and every state is unique in its implementation. So looking forward to hearing your stories.
All right. Well, it looks like the chat has paused here a bit, so we'll move on. It's great to hear about how you guys are thinking about using the toolkit, and so with that in mind, we wanted to reset and take a look at not just this part of year 2, but kind of the broader vision that we have for year 2. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy to talk a little bit more about our goals under EBE.
Thank you, Megan, and wow, what a bunch of great ideas. I can hardly wait to see the transcript. They were coming in so quickly that we had to keep scrolling back to see what they were, and I know that we missed some. So thanks to all of you for the great participation. Just briefly, let's review the goals of what this was all about. You can see them up there. I won't read them to you, but enabling the policies, obviously, and helping the states to identify and measure and meet their goals. But you guys have done a lot of work on those first 2 goals. We expect that in year 2, you'll continue doing a lot of that, but we're really going to focus on the sharing aspect, which is the 3rd goal, which is enabling the states to share their knowledge of business engagement. Again, it wasn't just invented. You guys have some good stuff, and you've got some good stuff to build on. So how we share that, how we disseminate that, how you all disseminate that to other states, and provide technical expertise and assistance and expand the business engagement strategies and policies is going to be what this next year is all about. I'm going to turn it over now to Rochelle. Rochelle?
Okay. Hello, team. Actually, I want to talk about basically beautiful. I'm getting tongue-tied. I'm sorry. Beautiful roads for year two activities and what the states will be doing. Implementation, like where are you now, where are you going, and the use of our EBE tools. And also, I want to get into about the sharing, the building capacity within our own states, as well as sharing with other states, neighboring, regional, across the country, and also be an advocate for EBE resources. And also what DOL will be doing is basically supporting peer sharing, mentoring, where we can help with coordinating activities across states, publicizing your webinars and other resources to the system, managing the COP, connecting with EBE peers to partner with, I guess, on year 2 efforts and with non-participating states who want to learn from you and share their CE efforts. Also creating our library or resources, I guess example, continuing collecting resources from you for the toolkit, updating our EBE, COP to promote visibility, sustainability, collecting stories, experiences, and resources. And I want to turn it over to Jonathan or Megan.
Great, thanks Rochelle, thanks Wendy. Say our 2 new members right into the thick of things. They'll be you'll be hearing lots from them, I'm sure. Talking about that big piece we have for year 2, the peer sharing and mentoring, we want to open it back up to the chat again, and I'm just going to cede the chat window here. But
while Jonathan does that, I'll jump in. But we know that you guys have done a lot of thinking already about what year 2 is going to look like, particularly the peer sharing piece. You thought about this when you put together your implementation plans, and we know that there have been a lot of changes that you guys have all gone through internally, as well as within our EBE initiative here. So first we want to start the discussion by hearing about what it is that you are planning to do, and you can go ahead and start typing in the chat from the window at the bottom. And you might want to be thinking about, what are you really good at? maybe you put forward some general ideas in your implementation plan. Maybe they were more specific, but I think we've all done a lot of growing and development over the last year, and I think that, like we've talked about, you guys are emerging as leaders within the system on business engagement, and you're knowing yourselves better, you're knowing your systems better, and we want to hear more about what you're thinking of doing, what you can share, and how you might do this.
So one way we were, when we were batting this idea around the table, what we thought about was like really how you all defined your ideal outcomes for year 2. What, since your business engagement will be unique to your own state, it was more about what do you see as sort of, like Megan said, your specialty, and where do you want to take it? What are the ideal outcomes that you will be able to achieve after this year, second year?
Okay, so while some folks are starting to type in here, another thing to think about is what support you might need from us. You can feel free to type in some of that too, and we can start that conversation as well. So Colorado is sharing that they've already begun the mentoring of Wyoming earlier this month. That's wonderful. And by participating in their business development rep training and some of their other SME sessions. So that's great. And Karen, I'm especially excited to see that you're saying you've received as much as you have given. Like Wendy said, we know that this is not a new concept in the system, and that while we have a certain set of resources that we are excited to share with our neighbors, be open to what they want to tell you too about what they're doing, and bring that back to our community so that we can be better informed and share those with others as well.
And great to hear from Yolanda again in Mississippi, training their one-stop staff with the, I imagine, the BSR curriculum and hopefully some of the other supporting resources. I'd say those are our frontline people, so we really want to make sure they have access to the most amount of tools as possible.
And also, like Karen mentioned, they had their SME appointment. So that's great to hear, and one of the ways in which we're hoping to hear more from you guys is how those SME appointments went, what takeaways that you're going to implement within your states, and what you think is good to share with your neighbors and those whom you're mentoring.
And I see Laura there in North Carolina in the blender of change. I like that. I might have to steal that metaphor.
Me too. I'm taking it.
It's so we talk a lot about mentoring as being state to state or within the region, but just as importantly, mentoring can happen at an internal level of the organization. Sometimes you as the state team lead might be the only one really working towards business engagement, and you'll want to bring some other people along to lighten the load. So mentoring within your state, whether it be at the your leadership level at the governor's office, getting them on board with some of your strategies. We really hope these tools can double both as resources to help you do that internally as well as externally to other state teams.
So Laura's doing appropriate lockout, tagout procedures, I see.
This is Wendy. I just wanted to point out, just again from my background, in a metropolitan area or a town maybe of any size, you're going to have a business service, a BSR. But you know, in a lot of places where one-stops exist, they don't have that kind of resource. And so the frontline person does it all. They may be an ED, employment development or employment security development, however, whatever you call it in your state. Frontline staff, they may be a one-stop WIA-funded staff, but they all need to know a little bit about what happens when the businessman walks through the door or doesn't walk through the door, and they're actually on the phone trying to help recruits and slots or placements, or that's not the language they're going to use, I know, but how they're going to work with them, because that's a big bulk of the one-stop system is not located places that have people who are specifically dedicated to that task.
Great, and then I see Joan in Minnesota. Again, clarifying the common definitions with BSRs and doing some good, important work with the Salesforce screen and dashboards. I know a lot of people have expressed interest in Salesforce, both from a sort of fine-tuning something that already exists or bringing on a new CRM system to help them engage their business customers. We want to keep this chat open here and just move on to this next slide here. Keep typing away if you have other mentoring activities that you'll be completing. Here we're sort of presenting it as a menu of suggested activities. I mean, we know that not everybody has advanced to the part where they are ready to do some outreach to other states, and they're still in the implementation phase, or they're still in the organizational phase if there's been a lot of flux within your organization. But as part of this grant, you all committed to being those peer-to-peer mentors, and so for those that are still maybe a few months away, we wanted to put out these suggested activities of things that you could share with other states internally within your own state, and then hopefully with your neighboring colleagues. You know, a big resource that we were happy to provide you with was those access to the subject matter experts. And we know that some of those meetings are still going on. You had to reschedule a couple of them, but we really want to know what you benefited from their expertise. If you'll be able to share it with us, with your teams, and how it really informed the work that you're doing on your own level. Again, since a lot of our outreach was done virtually, we do want to encourage anybody who would like to host their own webinar to present either some of the resources within their state, their successes, perhaps even shared challenges that you think you might share with other states. Sometimes the best way to solve it is really just to get an open chat going like we have now to really start the creative juices flowing about common solutions to common problems between states. So going forward, I know when we've had some of you present before on our webinars, you might have had 10 to 15 minutes, and you mentioned that you'd be interested in doing a much larger rollout of your experiences. So anybody who's spoken before or in the upcoming months as you roll out new tools that wants to sort of put the spotlight on it and roll it out to this group, I like to think of it as, you guys are pilot states in this project, so anything that you share within this group, we can sort of think of it as a piloting a test phase where you will get, in a sort of so-called safe space to bounce ideas off your colleagues here. I mean, we think that's one of the best ways that you'll be able to get some good direct feedback on your tools.
So to build off what Jonathan's saying, up here we've got what we're sort of calling a menu of suggested activities. As you're thinking about what you're going to do in terms of what your topics for your peer sharing and mentoring activities might entail, like these are some of the ideas that you could start thinking about. But there's a lot of different ways in which you can do this. So it might be a webinar, like Jonathan mentioned. if you've contributed on a webinar before,